Hello, everyone. My name is Wayne Stanley. It is a joy to be with you today. I am the owner and founder of Bowe Digital. We are a marketing company that helps just about everybody in the real estate community and other small businesses with everything on the traditional side of their marketing and on the digital as well. Today, we're specifically going to talk about some AI tools and specifically Chat GPT. I know that we've got a few different folks that are participating in the webinar today from all kinds of different areas. So just a little bit of information up front is that we are recording today's webinar. So you'll be able to access this afterwards. So if you're taking notes or if you're listening from the car or whatever you may be doing, just know that this will be available to you afterwards. Not only will we give you the recording, but we'll also make sure that you have a copy of the slides as well. I have talked about this a lot in the past, probably a year or so at this point, demystifying Chat GPT, helping people think about it differently. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of everything in this today. I'm going to try to give you some, whether you've never used Chat GPT before or you are a pro and you're looking at how to take it to the next level. I think there's a little bit of everything in here for folks. But I always tell everyone, be selfish with your time. You've decided to sign up for this webinar and you are a friend of Flying S Title and you want this to be a good use of your time. So please feel free to use the chat functionality to ask me anything as we go along here. And I am more than happy to interrupt what I'm saying to answer those questions. You don't have to wait until the end or anything like that. I'm a pretty casual presenter, so I think you'll find that I can interrupt easily within all of this. The chat will allow you to ask questions. You can also comment. Anything like that that you may want to do is all available through there. Let's see here. Make sure I haven't forgotten anything on my little list here. Again, I appreciate Flying S Title for having the conversation for us today on all things Chat GPT. It's one of the questions I get asked most often is, do I think it will not be replaced. I won't be replaced by ChatGPT at this point. There is a lot of different types of AI that are out there. There are a lot of different types of ways that people are using AI. Marketing is a really low-hanging fruit for an example of how to use AI tools like ChatGPT for marketing, but it's a long way away from replacing the human brain and human creativity. And I'm going to talk about some of that stuff a little bit too. So let's get into it. For those of you that want the background, there's always somebody that nerds out a little bit more than others. And so I always like to give a background on some of this because AI has been around for a long time. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. A lot of what people think is artificial intelligence is actually automation. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second as well. But ChatGPT is essentially a chatbot that was launched by OpenAI in November of 2022. And there are lots of other chatbots that have been launched before that, since then. And a lot of folks are curious as to why ChatGPT, rose to the surface. And number one was definitely the ability to its user friendliness. It also had a huge amount of money behind it, so it made the biggest splash in terms of fundraising and that sort of thing as well. So that was a big key to a lot of this as far as why ChatGPT rose above others or why it has so many more. I mean, I've seen crazy stats that it has tens of millions more monthly users than the next highest one in the United States, which is definitely Google Bard. If you're not in the AI space, there are so many different tools and functions and apps. And I'm on TikTok every day, probably too much every day, but I think that one of the things that always gets me is there's somebody always posting a video about how, they oh gosh, if you do these 10 apps, you can become an AI master in a week. If you just focus on one or two a day, you can become an AI master. It all changes all the time. And as you'll see, the quality, like most things in life, the quality of what you get out of any of these AI tools depends on the quality of information that you're giving it, because there is a difference in all of this. So why is it a chat tool versus something that's actually creating or who knows what? And it's just important to know that a lot of this is used for natural language. It's meant to be content creation. It's meant to be more of a chatbot that can learn things from you, learn things from the internet, and be used for a variety of tasks. So one of the unique things about ChatGPT is that it doesn't have a super long memory. It's not up to date on today's world. So for example, I presented to the Florida Land Title Association on ChatGPT in November of last year. And I used an example that at that point, ChatGPT was only aware of life through April of 2024. So yes, it can know and read real-time events and things that are happening right now. But for example, in November, when I said, who is the president of the United States? ChatGPT, this was probably a week before the election, ChatGPT said, Joe Biden is running for president, and so is Donald Trump. It had no idea of what had happened with the race, and that Kamala Harris was the Democratic nominee and that sort of thing. When you asked it more specific questions about what was happening in that moment, it knew that there was a change. But in general, for some of those broad sweeping things where you just ask it a question, you have to remember that its short-term memory is not very long at this point, because a lot of that stuff has to be loaded into the system. So that's why. So I wanted to also, in terms of what AI is and people that are worried about it taking over the world and all that kind of stuff, like I said, AI has been around almost since the dawn of computers and technology in general, in terms of what we call reactive machine artificial intelligence. So there's no memory there. It's just data analysis. It just spits out information. And then there's limited memory AI, and that's really the phase of AI that we're in right now. It's generative, like ChatGPT. It's generating based on on information that we give it. Self-driving cars are generative artificial intelligence because of the maps that we're providing, the destinations that we're providing, the data that it's given. One of the reasons that your tools that you might use on your phone or in your home, like a Siri or an Alexa, that sort of thing. One of the reasons it can be so frustrating is that we expect AI to be more evolved than what it is, partially because movies and pop culture make it seem that way, partially because we see all kinds of stuff from other technologies and businesses that are showing what the future could look like, but we're not really there yet. We're still in this limited memory phase. So that's why sometimes when you ask Siri something, she'll just say, I don't know. Or Alexa will say, I can't help you with that. And it's one of the most, if you're somebody that uses it like I am, it's one of the most aggravating things, because I'm like, I thought you were supposed to be my assistant, like I thought you were supposed to be helping with this. So once we get out of that world, we're into what's called theory of mind AI. We're not really there yet, but this is where AI starts to understand emotions and thoughts. So for example, when Siri or Alexa tells me that they can't help me, and I maybe tell them how ineffective they are or how much they annoy me, it doesn't understand that right now. Or it'll say, like if I say, Alexa, you're just really dumb, she doesn't react because she can't understand emotions and those kinds of thoughts. We're getting closer to that. There's a lot more testing going on with things in that world where it can understand, if you're in a depending on what you're asking for it to understand emotion and thought, would be able to customize what we're doing even more. That will really take artificial intelligence to a whole new level, but we're just not at that point right now. And then the big one that a lot of folks talk about is fully self-aware artificial intelligence, where it has its own thoughts and emotions. And a lot of people think that that's what's happening now, but a lot of it, again, is what's being fed to these different chatbots and things like ChatGPT. So I know that's down in the weeds, but I just wanted to explain it, and I wanted to make it a little more approachable for folks, because even ChatGPT, sometimes if you haven't seen it or used it, some people get really nervous about it, and I just don't want that to be the case. I did want to touch on automation versus artificial intelligence right now, because a lot of companies and a lot of individuals, a lot of real estate agents, it doesn't really matter who, think that they're ready for artificial intelligence, or they read something that says you should be using artificial intelligence to make your life more efficient, or to make your business run smoother, or to grow your bottom line and that sort of thing. And artificial intelligence, as I've said, relies on data. It relies on data being put into this that it can learn from and grow from. And a lot of small businesses, especially realtors, that consider themselves, whether you're an individual agent and that's your small business, or you're part of a larger brokerage and that's your business, we're not always good at harnessing our own data. We work with a lot of realtors around the country, a lot of title companies, credit unions, and they just haven't harnessed their data yet. So I say all the time, I'm like, until we have that, if we can't do drip email campaigns using your data, then we're nowhere near being able to use AI in a big way. But we might be able to do a lot of automation, setting up things that are routine and things that take you time. Automation is a whole other category and a whole other conversation. And so if you're talking to your technology team, and maybe that's you, maybe that's your nephew, maybe you actually are lucky enough to have a budget and a team, make sure to know that difference so that you're speaking the right language. Because if you're talking about AI, they may talk to you about your limits and your inability to use some of that right now. But if you talk about automation, you may have a whole other door open up of possibilities for you on things that could make your life a little easier there. So what does ChatGPT really look like? This is the login for ChatGPT. When you go to the site, you can log in to create an account if you want. You don't have to create an account. There are a few different services within ChatGPT that won't work if you don't have an account. There's also a paid version of ChatGPT that you can utilize. The biggest advantage, or the biggest perk of the paid version, is that your data isn't put into the rest of the ChatGPT universe. It is protected if you are part of the paid version of ChatGPT. If you're not, if you load something like you say, I want you to give me a synopsis of this contract, and you load a contract that's personal to you, or you get a new healthcare plan benefits package and you put that PDF into ChatGPT and say, give me the top line bullet points that I need to tell my team. Any of that private information, any of that specific proprietary information for your organization or your client is now part of the public domain within ChatGPT, and that's what it's learning from. This is where a lot of folks in the intellectual property space are trying to figure out legally what's going to end up happening with some of these tools, because if I put in a poem that I write, there's a chance that if somebody else, if Michelle or Debbie with Flying S title, they put in one day that they want a title poem, ChatGPT could decide that it likes one of the lines of my poem, and there's no attribution to me through this stuff. ChatGPT makes it seem like they've created something unique from you, but again, it's learning from other data. So it's not creating anything unique to you. It's learned it from somewhere. And so that is something to be careful of and cautious of from this stuff, is why you still have to have the human brain. You still have to add your own creative touch. It's not a set it and forget it kind of situation. It can help, and it's a great tool in so many ways, but you're going to have a little bit of a headache if you just take everything individually and verbatim from the system. So once you're in there, what does it look like? This is an example screenshot. I think we're in ChatGPT 4.0 now, or maybe 5, I don't remember. But over on the left, it does keep a history of your things that you've asked. So this is just a sample from one of my ChatGPT accounts. That's something else. You can use a variety of emails and set them up for different things. So I have one ChatGPT account that I use in my real life, and then I have one that I use for examples, for things that I'm like, I'm going to search this or ask this or upload this, and I don't want it necessarily tied to the rest of my account, or I don't want it in the public. One of them is a paid account. I don't want it to be in the public sphere of all of this. That's totally up to you on how you want to do any of that. But So this is just an example. So it does keep a history over on the left of things you ask. So if it had a really good idea and you close out the window, and you're like, oh, I lost all of it, you can go back and get it again. There's also a mobile app for Android and iPhone, so you're able to use the system the exact same on that app as well if you want to. But as you can see here, it says on the the messaging piece of it, the actual chat part. What are you trying to do? How can I help you today? You can ask for it to analyze data, or write an email, to recommend some activities. That's something that's super popular in general on ChatGPT. Are people when they're traveling for work and they are normally they go to a really big gym and they've got all kinds of options. You could put into ChatGPT, hey, I'm traveling for work and I'm in the hotel gym and it's only got these 4 pieces of equipment. Normally I'm a CrossFit junkie. What exercises would you recommend for me to still get my workout today? And it will spit out a whole plan using the equipment that you have in front of you that fits in with a CrossFit kind of workout. People use it for, and I'm just trying to give you some non-business things that people have used this for too, because we're going to get heavy into the business side here in a second. But meal planning is another hugely popular one. People will say, I've got this many kids and I've got this budget and I've got these allergies and or just these, specificities of all the quirks for families of my kids don't like this and my kids don't eat that. You can put all that in and it will spit out your meal plan for you for the week. All that kind of stuff to make your life easier for checklists and planning and everything in that regard. It can do for you as well. And on the paid version, you can also upload documents, you can upload images, you can have it create images, all that kind of stuff is possible within there too. Now it's not perfect, and I'll get into some of that and give you some examples of some of that for sure. But I'm going to give you some things to think about just in terms of how to use it first. So there are some main overarching ways that it can be used for real estate agents, and I'm going to get into some really specific ways. But one of the things that I have seen be super helpful for folks is the idea that you can use a tool like ChatGPT to simplify complex ideas. And so one of the examples I'm going to show you in a little bit has to do with the National Association of Realtors settlement that happened last year and what's gone on with that around the country. And that may be a bigger conversation in your guys' markets, and it may be a smaller conversation, but I'm going to use it as an example of something that we got an update from NAR on the settlement, and how did we use it to simplify that to be able to send out from one of our title companies that we work with. But it can also, if you are introducing new folks on your team and you're trying to get them to understand a bunch of legal terms, you can have it say like, hey, how can I'm doing day 1 training. And so if they're not ready for this whole document of legal terms, how can you help me give this to them in bite-sized pieces? Or you could say, here are a number of legal terms that come up every day in conversation in my market. Help me create an education plan for a new team member to help them start to learn this. Because as we all know, just because they pass their real estate exam doesn't mean that they're ready to have conversations right away, or that they pass the test for what you deem is most appropriate to be able to know out on the streets for some of these conversations. So it can help in that way too. And not just terms, but it could also be maybe you have some new regulation in one of your markets and you want to explain that to your folks. You could do that. You could have it give you creative ideas on how to train on that. Like give me a scenario where we can act out a skit to help train this. Give me 3 PowerPoint slides for this. If I was creating a video to explain this to my team, create a video script, that kind of stuff. All of that feeds into some of these in other ways too, but those complex ideas, when you need to break it down so that it's much easier to digest for your teams, sometimes for yourself, and for your customers, that can be a really great way to utilize ChatGPT. And then additionally, you can use it for assisting with tasks. A lot of people talk about customer service tasks and things, so that it can help with obviously marketing plans, but you always get asked certain questions, and so instead of constantly recreating the wheel or typing out a new answer to it, you can ask ChatGPT really quickly. You can save one of those prompts so that like, this is let's say you live in an area where you get asked a specific question about oil rights or mineral rights or something like that. You could very easily, um, or like there's one specific subdivision that has like crazy archaic covenants or something, then you get asked about that more than any other. Anything that you create through ChatGPT, you could have that automatically saved, so you can copy and paste those back to your customers really quickly. Another great way to use it is by analyzing data, really thinking through data differently. This could be data, maybe you are lucky enough that you live in a market where I should have looked this up ahead of time, but if your real estate association, your realtors association puts out economic data at a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis, you can put that information into ChatGPT and say, break this down. Tell me what matters the most for my county. Tell me what matters the most for my region or anything like that. Or you can pull national data in and show those types of things. I also like to have it compare other data and help me think about how to use it to my benefit. So for example, one of the things that I do most often is when new numbers come out for jobless claims, for the market, for anything like that comes out from like the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, all that stuff, I put it in and I say, using this data, how can I relate it to real estate so that I can use that in conversations, so that maybe it'll give me a clever idea for a press release, so I can put out a press release locally saying, nationally we're seeing this, but in our specific county, we're really lucky and now is a buyer's market, or, who knows what I might want to do with that. But you can use it to break it down, but not just break it down, supplement other data. So it may be data that's not like always specific to our industry, but maybe you're going to some kind of career fair and you're trying to grow your brokerage and talk to people about why they should be a real estate agent. You could compare data from the dental industry and how happy those folks are in their roles versus a realtor, and how happy they are in their role, and talk about the data between those and how to sell that or talk differently to folks. You can do anything in that realm that you might want to. And then basic templates, that's another big one for folks. So whether that's Excel documents and spreadsheets, or PowerPoint slides, or letters, forms, all that kind of stuff. There are some that use ChatGPT for a basis for legal documents and things like that. LegalZoom exists because it's using largely learning modules like ChatGPT. So you can go into a LegalZoom and say, I want to create an LLC and I want it to do these things, and here's the owner and everything else, and poof, it would spit out an LLC for you. ChatGPT would probably do the same, but it's another great example of, I would still probably talk to an actual attorney before using that as real legal information, especially, the rules for your own brokerages and everything that you might be with. Or if you're an independent agent and you haven't thought about that kind of stuff, or the kind of edges that you should give to your team. So if they're putting out contracts and they're using something like ChatGPT to do that, you might want to ask to make sure, so that you can make sure that you're protected and all of that. But those are kind of the four big buckets of how you can use ChatGPT: complex ideas, really distilling that down, assisting with tasks, analyzing data and comparing data, and basic templates. But now we're going to get into some very specific real estate agent tools and ways that people are using ChatGPT. And some of them you've definitely heard of, some of them you haven't, but I'm also, in case you're using it, I'm going to give you a couple of things to think about in this. So one of the number one ways, if you Google any kind of like article on how realtors are using ChatGPT, everyone says you should use it to write property listings because that'll save you so much time. Yes, and you should still customize them. You should still read them to make sure they're accurate and correct. The two words that we see the most, where I immediately these days, after over a year plus of really diving into ChatGPT for real estate, I know that ChatGPT wrote a property description if I see that the property is impeccable in some way or bespoke. The bespoke one, I don't know who put what into ChatGPT at some point that talked about bespoke properties, but it's one of the most insane describers that I've seen on there because I don't really know what a bespoke property would be. And some of you are probably Googling it right now because it's such a unique word that is a great descriptor, but it's one that my whole team flags. Where immediately, if we're working with a new real estate agent and we see a bunch of their property listings say bespoke, we then try to compare those to others, and we'll say, "Hey, did you know that for every 2 and 3 bedroom, 2 bath house in your market, there are 5 realtors that always say almost the exact same thing that you do?" We'll do a comparison to say like, and we know that because we can see in their property descriptions what they're doing. So just keep that in mind, that you still want to customize it. And you can say like if you were asking it to create property listings for you, you could very easily say, and make sure you don't use common phrases like impeccable and bespoke. You can tell it what not to use as well. And we're going to get into, after this, we're going to get into the very specific formulas that you should use for your prompts, for any of this stuff. And I think that that'll help too, to know how to best ask for the right thing from this. Because like I said, it really depends on what you put into the system. So after property listings, you've also got creating base marketing email content. People are often like, well, what does that really mean though? I would not use it to create blogs. A lot of folks, there are a lot of articles out there that would say you can use it to create blogs and that will help your SEO. And that's true, but you need to do a lot of customization. If you're going to use it to create a blog, you need to know ahead of time what your keywords should be for your business on your website. That way you can tell ChatGPT, write a blog that's this length, meant for SEO, that uses these specific keywords and doesn't mimic my competitors, and then name their names so that it can really look at all of that for you. You got to be super specific for the blog stuff. But the base email marketing content are things that are meant to save you time. Like, I've wanted to, for folks that bought from me in 2019, anyone that I haven't seen since, I want to send them an email. You could ask them, you could put into ChatGPT that you want to send them an email and have them handle that. You could also, if your data is a mess, like we talked about before, a lot of data is a mess, you could put your data in and say, I want this to be sorted by years of closings or something like that. A lot of people use ChatGPT for baseline emails for leads as well. So they'll have specific emails that it creates for somebody that reaches out generally on their site, for somebody that reaches out for a specific property, for somebody that reaches out for commercial, for investors. They might have like 5 or 6 buckets of auto responses. So like if they're super busy that day or something, they have an assistant that can respond, or they can respond from the car really quickly and just paste a response in so that people see some form of active, affirmative response saying like, I've got this, I'll be back later with more information or something. Another huge one is developing calendars for social media content. Again, you can be super specific with this, and you should be, and I'm going to give examples of how you should ask for that stuff here in a second. But I wouldn't just say I want a month, give me 30 days of social media content for trying to get more real estate listings. If you do that, you're going to get something that's very vanilla that anybody else that asks anything close to that is going to get as well. But when we talk about the prompts, you'll see that if you are more specific in what you're asking for, you can get something that's truly worthwhile to you. And I wasn't planning to do this, but I'll even give an example of something that yesterday I needed to finish a project for my team. And I was just kind of brain dead toward the end of the day. And so I went to ChatGPT for a little bit of brainstorming help because I wasn't quite there. But I spent probably 30 minutes really putting out my prompt so that it gave me what I wanted. And what I got, I was just like, there's no chance I would have come up with this today, but this is exactly what I need. You can also personalize property descriptions. So this is really cool for if you've got a specific set of properties and you want them to appeal to a specific buyer that you have, for example, you can change the property descriptions based on that buyer. So you can say, ChatGPT, I have this buyer, and you give them their persona, explain what they're looking for, where they're from, all of that kind of information. And then you can go into help me personalize these property descriptions so that these most appeal to this specific prospect. And then you can put that into a marketing email to them, or into a drip campaign, or to Instagram DMs to that person. Like wherever you're doing your communication and your marketing, you can use this stuff in there. So just because I say one specific place, like I say marketing or email marketing, and you're like, we don't do that, that's fine. If you're doing Snapchat messages, if you're doing TikTok DMs, whatever it is that you're talking with folks on, you can use that content and that information to do that stuff. Same with improving emails and texts. One of the exercises that we're going through with our team right now is I was like, I think that we are too verbose in the emails that we send to our customers. And it's a fine line, because on the one hand, we want to say, how are you? How are the kids? I saw on Facebook that you guys went to your first college walkthrough last week with your oldest. Like, you want that personal connection, but also for what we do, like I said, we work with a lot of folks in real estate. And so they're busy and they're giving 2% of their time to their marketing that they've outsourced to us. And so in that 2% of time, if we're spending the first half of an email talking too much, they're not getting to what do we need to actually do. And so you can run past emails through ChatGPT and say, how could I make this email more efficient? Or how could I rewrite this to most explain the urgency of the matter, the sincerity of what you're talking about, who knows what. You could ask it for critiques to make it better. And the same goes for text messaging. So if you are using text message marketing at this point, which, as in a total aside, even if you're not, you should be collecting mobile numbers so that you can do that in the future, because it's something that's growing very fast. And if it's not on your website to be collecting mobile numbers, it should be. And you need to make sure you have some sort of legal disclaimer that says you're collecting it so you can text them in the future, so they're opting in. And you also want to change your data policy that's on the bottom of your site to make sure that it says that you're collecting text numbers as well, especially if you're doing business in California, Texas, Indiana, North Carolina. They have some of the strictest consumer privacy laws right now. But regardless, make sure that's updated. But that's just a small soapbox to the side that you should be collecting that. Even if you're like, I don't ever want to text anyone, you might get a really great opportunity, or something big might change in the way of technology and what's most popular in your market right now. And if you're not ready for it, you'll be left behind. It can also create checklists based on your business. So like if the way that you handle your buyers, that there's a checklist that they need to do for closing, or to get the property listed, or I know I said buyers and that's sellers, but whatever specifics you have for your organization and your business model, you can have it create checklists for those. Again, you can also have it create checklists personalized based on who you're working with. So again, you could put in those parameters to say, like, I've got a buyer that's this age, or I've got a seller that is this age, this demographic, this is what's important to them. I'm worried that X, Y, and Z will be a hurdle for them during this process. Help me create a checklist so that they understand what I need from them. I know that some of that seems like spoon feeding. Some of it seems too personalized, and you may be thinking, I don't want to do that. But number one, that's the way the world works these days. We're used to a much more personalized service, all the way down to the drinks that we can get at the movie theater or at our fast food places and that sort of thing. If you want a diet strawberry Fanta iced tea grossness, you're able to do that. You can add all kinds of stuff to it and do it yourself. And that's the minimum level of personalization that you can do in that regard. And so people are used to it. We're used to it with our Amazon purchases. We can decide how often we want things to come, when we want them to come. They have you can order the Amazon buttons. So, like, I used to have, they got rid of some of them, but there was a button that I had next to my Tide in the laundry room. And when I needed Tide reordered, I literally pressed the button and it would reorder automatically from Amazon. So we're used to this personalized experience. And I think in this market, even though you guys are in a market that's been a little bit hotter than others, you know, the personalization is what can really move the needle, because there are still transactions happening. For as bad as last year was overall for a lot of folks in the country, there were still something like 4.5 million homes sold, and we're normally at like 6 plus. But even with low inventory and all of that, 4.5 million properties were in transition last year. And so if you weren't a part of that, then that's something that you can work on. And being more specific in some of this is definitely a way to win some of that business and to move forward there for sure. I haven't seen any chats come through yet, but if you do have questions or anything specific you want me to go into further for you, you can. I also know that some of you may be competitors with each other. And so sometimes folks are like, well, I don't want to ask this if it's going to benefit XYZ. My individual information will be available at the end of this. So I'm happy to answer emails, or to you can access my Calendly link and connect with me there too, whatever works for you. But other ways that you can use ChatGPT are definitely video scripts. And you can tell it whether you want it to be an actual script or whether you want it to be bullet points, but that can be super helpful. And you can say, specifically, what's the video for? Where's it going to be played? What do you want them to do? What's the information you want them to have? Is there a time limit that you should have on it? All of that kind of stuff you can include in there. So it's as specific and as personal to what you're doing as possible. You can also do newsletter topics. That's a big one. A lot of folks get really hung up on, like, they're not sure what to share for those newsletters and all of that. Combining the newsletters with some of the data stuff that we talked about a little bit ago can be crazy helpful, because newsletters are just a bear for a lot of folks. Summarizing long documents into short abstracts, that's what I'm basically going to show you here in a second, is you get some big, hey, this is something that's changing, but I really just want to let my team know really quickly, this is on the horizon, and I just want, here are 3 things you need to know today. That's really great. So then I don't have to sit there and synthesize it. I make sure it's accurate, obviously, but it's something that's not worth, it's a $5 problem in my $1,000 problem day. That's how we try to word it sometimes. And so those $5 problems you can probably put in so that it's not really difficult, but it takes time. And those things that take time and aren't difficult are the perfect things that you should use this kind of stuff for. You can also use it to translate email and text, both like literally in terms of language translation, but also you can it's interesting sometimes to see how it puts things out. If I say, hey, I want you to show me how I might explain this topic to a somebody who is a boomer who has bought and sold many homes in their lifetime, but also how do I explain this to Gen Z who is, has never bought a house and but has more money saved than some of the Gen X folks that I work with. Like, there's all kinds of stuff there where you can say, like, help me translate these ideas even demographically, not just language based. And then obviously customer support by sending follow-ups and appointment reminders and all of that kind of stuff. Again, all the things that take you time to do that you don't want to focus on. Or like we had somebody recently that we worked with them for a long time, and they were like, it just drives me nuts because every day at the end of the day, I have to email all of these people to let them know, that a certain action had taken place. And I was like, number one, that's automation, and we can automate that for sure right away. But if you're wanting to personalize some of that stuff, we could just put it into an Excel document and load it into ChatGPT to personalize that for you, and then you can paste that content. And at a minimum, it's going to save you half the time. And that really helped them to think about that kind of stuff differently. So there are ways that you can use this to create the language that you want or the process that you want, and then you might be using automation to actually set it up to do things automatically for you in the future. And I'm going to give you a few different apps and stuff at the end to think about. I'm going to give you some stuff that you may never have heard of that's like not really. I didn't want it to do anything that's too far out there right now because there's some stuff that's just crazy to me and I don't want to waste anybody's time. But again, for those of you that are just starting, there are going to be some things for you. And then those that are trying to take things to the next level, I've got some stuff there for you too. But I want to move into like, what should your prompts look like for ChatGPT? Like what, again, that whole specificity part of this. This is what you really need to think about for every prompt that you put in, because I've heard from lots of folks, they're like, I tried it. I just wasn't impressed with what it spit out for me. Or, I get very frustrated because sometimes if someone doesn't like something that we wrote, they'll say, oh, it just seems like you put it in ChatGPT, and I'll show them. I'm like, this is personal to you and you may not like it, but ChatGPT can't come close to this kind of specificity unless you work really hard at it. So every single prompt that you put in, which is what you ask of ChatGPT, whatever you're asking for it to do, needs to look like this in some form or fashion. You need to give it context. You need to have a specific task or instruction. You need to clarify exactly what you want to have happen, the call to action, whatever that may look like, and then you need to refine it. So what does that mean? This using some of those examples from earlier. I got to refresh my memory because there was one I said we can go through that. The social media content. So to give it context, where a lot of people mess up and they would say like, oh, I saw it, it wasn't unique enough for me, or it didn't match our business. Some people get lazy, candidly, and they'll go into ChatGPT and the only context they'll give is, I need a social media calendar, and the task and instruction is for the next 30 days for my Facebook page to buy and sell houses. And then they don't clarify, they don't refine, and they click enter, and ChatGPT says, boom, 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 boom. Here's 30 things that you can use for your social media. And it's all very vague, very vanilla. It's like, use testimonials, get more 5-star ratings, remind people that you can buy or sell, tell them the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market, all the things that you've seen a million times, right? Giving it the right context would be saying, ChatGPT, I want you to act as my social media expert. I am a real estate agent in Idaho. I am 42 years old. I have been in the industry for 13 years. I have won Best Realtor of the Year 16 times. I primarily focus on first-time home buyers, and I'm especially good at I'm getting out of my depth here. I'm especially good at getting them to understand why to buy versus rent. I have lots of friends in the community that would help to add to this content, and I want them to be part of what you create. And I want not only 30 days worth of content, but I want unique content for each of my social media platforms. I am active on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook. And then where you're clarifying, you're saying something to the effect of, I want people to have engaging content that is both fun and educational, right? So like that's a lot. And you might be sitting there saying, well, good God, I might just create it myself if I have to say all of that. Again, this isn't a robot with its own ideas here. It has to pull this information, but it can pull it together and make it more unique to you the more unique you give it the information up front. So it may do all of that, and it was only for each one, it's only giving you, it spits out, it only gives you the ideas. So it just gives you 30 ideas based on everything that you gave it. And it's like 90% of the way there, but maybe you were like, oh, I was really hoping it would do the copy too. Because that's another one where people will be like, not only did it not feel like me, but it didn't give me what I wanted. Again, going back to the Alexa and Siri annoyances. So you have to refine, and you have to say, I always say thank you, so that when we do get to that point where it has its own emotions and thoughts, it will remember, Wayne always said thank you to me. So if anything goes crazy, it'll be all right. But when you refine, you can say, this is all great, and I want to use this plan, but can you provide me with the copy for each one of these posts for each one of these platforms. You can do that. You can say, this is great. I approve each of these. Can you also provide the graphic ideas for each of these posts or the video ideas for each of these posts? That refinement is what takes it all a step further for you, and it keeps building what it's providing so that then it's even more specific to you. You will go less crazy on the refinement and feel like you're losing your mind on the refinement if you focus most on the prompt that you're giving it originally for the context, the task and instruction, and the clarification. That is the number one thing that you can do. And it's a really great, like if you're going to teach this with other members of your team or other associations or stuff, just a prompt writing workshop can be super helpful for folks, making it almost a Mad Lib to give them what they should be doing and asking. That's a great, we should do a blog post that has some Mad Lib Chat GPT prompts. But I think that, like something like that could be really useful, and as long as you're doing a prompt in that general vein, it can be helpful for what you're doing, and it's just going to make what you get so much better. And you can I promise you, if you test this, if you look at something that you asked before and you're like, oh, that was a vague answer, but you go through and you really think about your prompt different, you're giving it all of your background information, your audience's background information, local demographic info, and all of that stuff. You go through all of this and look at what you get differently. And I'm pretty certain that you're going to see something big there. If you don't, I would love to see it. Like, show me so that I can use that for my information and all of this too. But let me show you one example of this. And this was something that came out in the fall, and it had to do again with the settlement from NAR. They gave like a do's and don'ts when working with home buyers, and it was a 3-page PDF. And when I saw it, I was like, this is the perfect example where I can put this in. So over on the left is what I wrote to ChatGPT. And in case you're on your phone or something and you can't see it, it says, here is a new alert from the National Association of Realtors of the do's and don'ts when working with home buyers. Can you analyze it and provide me with a top line email I can send to my team? So when I was doing this, my team was going to be the title company, right? Like I was the owner of a title company and I wanted to send it to my team so that they could use it as conversation starters, for example, with our realtor customers. Like, hey, did you see this? Or this is really great social content we could be creating that our realtors might share, that sort of thing. And I said, can you also give me 3 social media post ideas using this content that I can share online? So again, whether that was us putting it out there or us saying like, hey, realtors, here are things you could do to educate consumers on what to expect in the buying process. So again, 3 pages, all of that stuff. And so the next slide is what ChatGPT spits out. And it says, team, I wanted to share these critical insights of the do's and don'ts. This is part of their response from the recent settlement. Here are the takeaways. And it gave 3 of the do's, 3 of the don'ts, and then that was just it. I think at the end it shared, my screen froze here. At the end of it, shared the social media ideas and said what you could do there. And I was like, well, that's great, but that's not quite right. So you can see, like I said, I always say thank you. I kind of give it some positive affirmation. And I said, but I actually want the email to come from me as the owner of a real estate title agency, and the audience will be my team so that they can use it with their real estate customers. Like, I wanted something that no one had to think about. I wanted it to be ready to be pushed out to the audience I intended. So I was like, can we change this just a little bit? And then you can see what it gave back to me was, hey team, I want to make sure they're going to lay this guidance. This is essential for us to share with our realtor partners so that they can stay compliant and effective in their practices. And so then the way it talks about the do's and don'ts is just a little bit different than the previous one, where we were explaining, what to do as an actual realtor versus we're sending this to them of like, hey, we just wanted to make sure you saw this. So a little small difference, but it really makes a big impact when you're thinking about that clarification, that refinement piece in this. And so that was, I wanted to give you an example that was both putting in a document and having it distilled, also having something that needed further refinement to it and that sort of thing. I didn't want it to be the standard like marketing example and build a blog post and all of that for me. But let me go back really quickly and think of one more prompt that we could do. So we did the social media calendar. Let's see, maybe it is that we're going to, let's look at this here. You could say something to the effect of, again, that beginning piece you could save it in your drafts, save it in a note on your phone, but where you say, uh, act as my marketing expert. I'm a realtor that's been around. I'm 42 years old. I've been around for all these years. I've won all these awards. Setting that up front each time is really helpful. And so you can save that piece of whatever you're doing. And then if you've got specific audiences that you always talk about or ask about, you can save that too, so you don't have to recreate the wheel each time. That will save you time and energy on this. But let's say you say I'm a realtor and I'm super busy, and one of the things that takes me the most amount of time is lead gen or referrals from previous customers. Here's a spreadsheet of my customers from the past 5 years, 3 years, whatever you want to do. Help me with a strategy to create these emails, to engage these people again. I haven't sent them an email in 5 or 6 years. So I want to engage them again. I want them to have this very specific call to action. Maybe that's anybody that refers somebody to me is entered to win something that's RESPA compliant. Maybe it's I want you to come and check out my new website. I want you to sign up for my newsletter. I want you to sign up for my text messaging that I'm going to start doing. Whatever it is, like I have this very specific call to action, and then help me with the schedule and a specific delivery method for these emails. And it's going to spit all that out to you. And then you'll want to clarify and you'll want to say, I only have 1 hour a week to do this with. So spread this out over how much time I will need to make this happen if I can only focus on it 1 hour a week. And then it will refine it and it will go through that with you and it will spit out something there. And then you can say, you can go back to it and you can say, actually, I also need this translated for my Spanish speaking customers. And for them, I only want to send every other email. So please combine the emails so that for that group, I'm only sending 6 instead of the previous 12. And it will do that for you. So the more that you keep refining it, it's like clay on a wheel, right? Like you've got to keep pushing it around. And sometimes I've had it where I'm talking to ChatGPT and I'm like, this just isn't it. And I sort of just, if I'm working on like a bowl or a vase, if you think about the clay analogy, I just crumple it back into a ball because I'm like, you're not getting this, So I'll just start over. I'll ask it a new prompt and start and say like, I want to start fresh, and I'll just try to think differently about what I'm asking it because again, it's learning from other things. So sometimes it just doesn't know, and that's okay. An example of this was I went to an insurance seminar and they did like a chat GPT versus the underwriter thing to show, because everybody, whether it's property and casualty, title, it doesn't really matter what kind of insurance it is in the world. Everybody, that's another question too of like, well, if it's these quick decisions, are those jobs in danger of AI? Again, not anytime soon. But it's like, they put a computer on the panel with these folks and they would ask the human underwriter, here's the scenario. If this happened, what would you say or do? And then they did the same thing for ChatGPT. And you could do this on a seminar for, if AI is going to replace agents at some point. I know that, there's always somebody that wants to talk about like Zillow wanting to do that or who knows what. And I think that you could very easily talk about the questions that you get asked most often, or what would you do if a home buyer wanted to do this during a transaction, or who knows what. And each of those real estate experts that are humans would have a very specific and clear response to that. And then you can ask ChatGPT and you can show that maybe it got 90% right, maybe it got 20% right, but either way, you're not going to be able to rely on that entirely. So it's a great way to show, especially that fear level of like, we're just nowhere near a takeover of any of any real kind there. So I hope that that's helpful to you to think about in all of this. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I've got one slide here to show you just the do's and don'ts that we've talked about, of do generate ideas, do create personas and provide info, do collect text message numbers, and check for accuracy and all this stuff. Don't feed it confidential information. Don't think about it with blog posting, and make sure that you're using human oversight, like I said. There are some apps that I want you to think about. There's an article here that I linked in the files that you can have access to, that has some great AI tools for real estate agents specifically. Reimagine Home is a cool one where basically if you've got an empty house and you know you're not going to have people necessarily walk through it, but you still want it staged, but you don't want to pay for the staging. Reimagine Home is a great way where you can put in the photos of the rooms and it will set up the staging for you. Epic is a giant, I think it's part of a brokerage in itself, but it also has a suite of marketing tools, and that's something that you can utilize, and it has all kinds of stuff in there. House Canary is one that uses all sorts of data for valuations and everything happening with taxes and other things in the economy for your local area to then create property listings. So they're super specific and super nerdy in that way. So that's one thing that you could look at. And then Get Floor Plan is another cool one. So for the folks that aren't using like homes.com, you have to have a floor plan in what you're posting. In some areas of the country, they are now mandating that you have to have a floor plan. Get Floor Plan allows you to put in all the pictures of the house, and then it will create the floor plan for you as an AI tool. It's really great in that way too. So that's another one. I wanted to give you some AI options that weren't language-based, like ChatGPT. And then this other one here at the end are just AI tools for work in general. So these tools that I mentioned, specific for real estate, these tools are just great in general for work and what you're trying to do. ChatGPT is the #1 chat bot by far. Jasper is a really fantastic tool that allows you to create content. The meeting recordings, personal productivity, all that kind of stuff is really your own decisions. But Gamma is really cool for slide decks. So if you are looking for a way to create super personalized slide decks for trying to get listings or for your commercial clients, Gamma is really cool because you can put in Word documents, or you can very specifically say what you want to go after, and it will not only help with the content, but it will spit out PDFs and PowerPoints and stuff. Again, it's not always perfect. For example, one of our customers created an email on their own one day, and they used Gamma to create it. And I said, "Hey, did you guys notice anything about this football team that you used?" And they were like, "No, why?" And I was like, 3 of the guys in the back don't have faces. All the men up front have faces. 3 of the guys in the back have blurred out faces, no actual features to be found. Not a big deal, not the end of the world, but it's an example of sometimes AI doesn't know to care, and it doesn't pick up on all those little things, like the fact that half your football team lost their face. So just keep that in mind for all of this. This is just a great summer. There are so many more than this. Like, this is just a good sample of these. You could search and say, I want all the competitors to each one of these, whatever you want to do. There's lots of options there, but I hope this gave you plenty to think about for your own business, for your customers, for how you might want to share this individually and otherwise. I appreciate Flying S Title for setting this up and letting us chat today. Again, my information is on this slide here. It's wayne@bowedigital.com, and I'll put my Calendly link in the chat if you would like to connect as well. I'm more than happy to brainstorm at any point, all of that kind of stuff. It's what I do every single day, and I love talking about all of this. So I hope this was useful to you. And again, if you're watching the recording and have anything new that you've seen since we did this webinar, please feel free to share that with us as well. And don't forget to send your business over to Flying S Title. They're fantastic, and you should. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day.